Have you ever laid awake at night replaying scenes in your mind? Opportunities you didn't take, people you hurt, dreams you abandoned? If you've ever felt that heavy knot of regret in your chest, this is the second chance story you need to hear right now. For years, Michael lived with the feeling that he had wasted his life. In his early 20s, he had big plans: start a business, travel, take care of his parents, build something meaningful. Instead, he just drifted. One small compromise led to another. He stayed in jobs he hated because they were safe. He stayed in relationships that drained him because he was scared of being alone. Whenever he thought about changing, he told himself, "I'll do it next year." But next year kept coming and going. Suddenly, he wasn't 22 anymore. He was in his mid-30s, looking at a life that looked nothing like the one he had imagined. What hurt most wasn't just where he was. It was knowing that so many of his wounds were self-inflicted. He remembered the college opportunity he walked away from because he was afraid to leave home. He remembered the side project he abandoned because he didn't see instant results. He remembered the good people he pushed away and the unhealthy ones he kept close. Every memory became another stone of regret in his chest. Instead of using that pain as fuel, he used it as punishment. Anytime he thought about changing, a voice whispered, "It's too late. You already had your chance." So he numbed himself with distractions, endless scrolling, streaming, eating, anything to keep his mind from looking in the mirror for too long. On the outside, his life looked fine. He paid his bills, showed up to work, joked with colleagues. But on the inside, he felt like he was living someone else's life on repeat. One evening, after an especially draining day at work, he came home, dropped his bag, and slumped onto the couch. He opened his phone and saw a photo memory from exactly 10 years before. A younger version of himself, eyes bright, talking excitedly about the future. The caption read, "This is just the beginning." He stared at that old version of himself for a long time. Then a question hit him so hard it almost knocked the air out of his lungs. If that guy could see me now, would he be proud? The honest answer was no. Not because his life was modest or ordinary, but because he knew he had stopped trying. He wasn't living with limitations. He was living with excuses. In that moment, the weight of regret became almost unbearable. He felt anger at himself, sadness for the years he had drifted, and terror that the rest of his life would look exactly the same. He could have stayed in that feeling and let it drown him. Many people do. But something different happened that night. Instead of running from the pain of regret, he decided to sit with it and listen. He took out a notebook he hadn't used in years and wrote one sentence in big letters across the page. "I'm tired of living as if my story is already over." Then he wrote another line underneath, "If life is offering me a second chance, I don't want to miss it." He didn't suddenly know how everything would change. There was no magic plan, no guaranteed success. All he knew was that regret could either be a prison or a teacher, and he was done letting it be a prison. So he did something simple but powerful. He listed his biggest regrets. And next to each one, he wrote a question: what small action can I take now that honors what I've learned? He wrote about the education he abandoned and realized he could still learn new skills online and in local classes. He wrote about the people he hurt and realized he could apologize even if it was years later, as a way to free both them and himself. He wrote about the dreams he dropped and realized that while he couldn't rewind time, he could restart from where he was. For the first time, his regrets started to transform into clarity. It wasn't just pain. It was pointing toward what actually mattered to him. That awareness became the foundation of his second chance. He made a quiet promise to himself that night. "I cannot change my first chapter, but I will fight for a better next one." It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was real. The next few months became his restart season. He didn't quit everything overnight or sell all his things to move across the world. Instead, he began rebuilding his life one decision at a time. The first change was his mornings. Instead of waking up at the last possible minute and rushing into a day he hated, he started waking up a bit earlier to spend time with his thoughts, his goals, and his notebook. In those quiet moments, he asked himself, what does my second chance look like today? Sometimes the answer was as simple as sending one application for a job that excited him instead of more roles that just paid the bills. Sometimes it was booking a low-cost course to learn a skill he had always talked about but never pursued. And sometimes it was reaching out to someone he had wronged and saying the words he'd avoided for years. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. Thank you for what you did for me back then." Not every response was neat or healing. Some people never replied, and that hurt. But even when the outcome wasn't perfect, taking responsibility lightened the weight he'd been carrying. He began to understand a hard truth. Living with regret is heavy, but living with denial is even heavier. By facing what he had done and what he had avoided, he started to reclaim his power in the present. He could not erase the past, but he could refuse to repeat it. That shift from "I ruined everything" to "I'm responsible for what I do next" was the moment he truly stepped into his second chance. Career-wise, his restart meant stepping into discomfort. He applied for roles he felt underqualified for, but deeply interested in roles that aligned with the parts of him he had buried long ago. His creativity, his desire to help others, his love for solving real problems. He faced rejection, of course. The old Michael would have taken those rejections as proof that he was destined to stay stuck. The new Michael saw them as part of the path. He refined his resume, improved his interview skills, and kept going. Eventually, one opportunity clicked, a position at a smaller company where he could grow, learn, and contribute in meaningful ways. When he got the offer, he realized something important. The job itself was a blessing, but the person he had become while fighting for that offer was the real gift of his second chance. On the personal side, his restart meant learning to treat himself with compassion instead of constant criticism. For years, he had talked to himself in ways he would never talk to a friend. "You're behind, you blew it. You're not good enough." Those words had become a soundtrack that played under every decision he made. Now, when that voice of regret started repeating its old script, he answered it differently. He would say, "Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I wasted time. But I'm still here, I'm still learning, and I'm choosing better now." Over time, his inner dialogue softened. He didn't excuse his past, but he stopped letting it define his worth. That internal forgiveness gave him the courage to pursue new relationships, new projects, and new experiences without constantly looking over his shoulder. A year after the night he saw that photo of his younger self, he sat down again with the same notebook. On one page, he had written his biggest regrets. On the facing page, he now wrote what those regrets had pushed him to do. Learn new skills, change careers, apologize where he could set boundaries, start taking his health and time seriously, and reconnect with a dream he had once buried. He realized something powerful. His second chance hadn't come as one big miracle moment. It had come as 100 small choices to act differently, to think differently, to believe differently about what was still possible for him. The life in front of him was not perfect, but it was honest. It was his. If you are living with regret right now, convinced that you've wasted too much time or made too many mistakes to fix anything, hear this clearly. Regret means you care. It means your heart is still awake enough to recognize what matters. That alone is proof that your story is not finished. You cannot go back and make your old choices better, but you can make your next choices wiser. Start by naming what you regret instead of burying it. Then ask the question Michael asked himself. What small action can I take now that honors what I've learned? Maybe it's an apology. Maybe it's enrolling in a course. Maybe it's ending something that's killing your spirit. Or maybe it's starting something you've been afraid to begin. Second chances rarely look like rewinding time. They look like finally using your time on purpose. This story comes from Willpower Stories, a channel for people who are done letting regret and fear control their future. Here, you'll hear powerful motivational stories about second chances, comebacks, discipline, self-worth, money, mental strength, and starting over told in simple English for a United States audience that wants real change, not just pretty quotes. If you're ready to stop living in the shadow of your past and start owning your second chance, subscribe to Willpower Stories, turn on notifications, and let every new story remind you that as long as you still breathing, it is never too late to restart your life with purpose.